Hello and welcome back to the garden. Today I'm outside to do a little bit of direct seeding. I'm going to direct seed both some cress and bupleurum in between my daffodils. I thought this would be a really great way to maximize the space in my raised beds over next to the greenhouse. And we'll head over and we'll do that in just a second. But first I also have some transplants right here behind me that are having a little bit of an issue that I need to deal with before I get them into the greenhouse. This is pennycress that I started from seed, and the problem is that it is already flowering in its seed trays, and this is likely my fault. I'm attributing it to an error in fertilization, which can cause flowering much too early. As far as I can tell, that is the only issue. So I think what I'm going to do is just pinch it off, and I'm going to do this with clippers rather than my fingers. And we're going to put that in the greenhouse for a few days and then plant it this weekend. So some of these small ones, I can see tiny little flower buds. Some of them seem okay, but I'm going to have to keep an eye on them and clip off the top if they do start to go to seed. I'm just taking off an inch or so, as long as there are a couple of sets of leaves underneath, and really they should branch even with only one set of leaves, but I'm not going to clip them quite that far down. This is my first year growing cress, and while pinching is not necessary, it's also not going to prevent you from getting a harvest. And it's not really the flowers that we want, but the seed pods after the flowers fade. But the only reason they weren't moved out to the greenhouse earlier is because the greenhouse is full. But I did make some room when I planted out all the ranunculus, which I will also show you shortly. As soon as we're done there, I think, nope, there's some more. There, these are now shorter and sturdier. It's chilly today, can you tell? My fingers are freezing. Now that I'm done with that, I'm going to put my mittens back on. Let's get this into the greenhouse. I've already opened up the greenhouse for the day. It is on and off sunny. There is not a ton of room in here. I think I'll just pop it right there. There we go. I now have 3 little shelves in here. They're both full. Everything on the ground is full. I can put some things up on that top shelf, but this has my lisianthus, and now it has some cress sitting on the top. Now the biggest job that I've done since we were out here last is building these hoops for the raised bed. I got a 100-foot roll of PVC pipe at my local hardware store. It was $38.99, and that gave me 12 of these hoops. And I didn't have to buy rebar to put in the ground. I had a whole bunch of old bamboo canes of various sizes out in the shed, and it was much easier to just use those. Now some ends of them were a bit too thick to go in the end of the rebar, but I managed to cut enough pieces for all 12 hoops just using what I already had. So you know that I'm a big fan of trying to use what's on hand before we go and buy anything new. So with just the cost of these hoops and a tool to use to cut the PVC, but that was, I think, $13. So a little more than 50, but that got me 12 of these hoops. And if I end up buying more, I can use the tool over again. So that was really helpful. I still have to put some plastic over the top, but if you can see just behind me to the picnic table, I took out the plastic the other day and it was just too windy. So rather than fold it all up and stuff it back in the barn, I actually just stuffed it under the picnic table. But I'm going to do that in the next couple of days. For now, we have this frost cloth covering my biggest bed of ranunculus. And it's kind of cold today. It was below freezing last night and will be again tonight, so I didn't bother taking this off today. There's still a little light getting under there. But the ranunculus in here have been planted for about a week and are looking fantastic. And there's another row just next to the greenhouse, a 30-inch by roughly 10-foot row that's covered in frost cloth as well. You can see it there just past the greenhouse. That's where all the rest of my ranunculus are. So here and over there, all the ranunculus is planted, and there's lots more going in the ground this coming week. In other news, the tulips are growing so fast. Here is the roughly 1,100 and some tulips that we planted in the fall. this bed and that bed. It is really interesting now to see the difference in size between the varieties and even color of the foliage. You can see these ones right here. They were the first ones to show in the bed, and over next to them, these are only just starting to come out. I only noticed them about 2 days ago, and these have been visible for a couple of weeks. These have a little bit more of a reddish tint to it. And then there's some over there that are just barely coming up, and I forgot I planted some daffodils in this bed too. So for the tulips, we really have a bed and a half, and then also a bed and a half of daffodils. But that last one over there is the one we're going to have a look at today. So this bed was planted the fall before last, so this will be the second year for these daffodils to bloom in this spot. And my plan is once they have finished flowering and we've harvested all the flowers, the foliage will stay for a little while, but then once it has died back, I'm going to lift these and move them to another spot. But while the foliage is dying back, this bed is not going to be productive at all. So I'm going to direct seed the cress and the bupleurum. I do have some that I've started in soil blocks down in my seedling room as well, but I'm going to direct seed some in between the daffodils. And the plan there is to keep this bed productive while the daffodil foliage is doing its thing. And hopefully the daffodils will give a little bit of protection to the small seedlings while they get established and start to grow. And as long as we get the timing right, the one crop shouldn't interfere with the other at all. So it looks like these daffodils will be blooming within 2 to 3 weeks, and at that time our seedlings should be no more than a few inches tall. So it should hopefully work out really well. The only other thing that's happening in this bed is there are a few little nigella seedlings that I've spotted. They're mostly confined to this area right here though, so they shouldn't get in the way, but I will do some selective weeding if I have to when these start to pop up. So I've already written my tags because I've made that mistake one too many times. We have 2 varieties of cress and 2 varieties of bupleurum. And I'm going to start on this side and work my way over. So what we have is from Floret, we have bupleurum graffiti, and from Johnny's, bupleurum green gold organic. And then my cress is both from Floret. We have emerald beads and penny cress. And penny cress is the variety that we had just pinched. So that's going to be the same. And this is all new to me. I grew bupleurum last year, but I have never grown cress. But I have wanted to. So clearly I needed 3 varieties. We're going to do 2 now and then another one later. The only thing with Floret is there are not a whole lot of seeds in their packages, but that's okay because we have lots of things to grow this year. Okay, we have penny cress first. So I'm going to stick the tag in first. This is a pretty quick work day today. I had a bit of a stomach bug over the weekend, as did my 6-year-old. And we're both still pretty tired. My husband was sick all of last week, so I really have to go clean my house because that's been sorely neglected. But I'll be happy to get this job down anyway, and then this weekend when the weather warms up, hopefully I'll be feeling up to doing a lot more. There's only about 40 or 50 seeds in this pack from Floret. This is the penny cress. So I think I'm going to do just 1 row. And then if I get really good germination, I can move some of the seedlings into a second. I'm going to leave this spot over here so that I'll have room to do that. I'm going to use this to make a bit of a trench, and then you don't really need to fill it in because as you water it, that's going to do that for you. This doesn't really need to be that thoroughly covered anyway, just a little bit. I like to grab a pinch and then I'm just wiggling my fingers to drop a few seeds at a time. And some say you cannot move seedlings that you thin out, but if you're careful, you definitely can. It's no different than planting a whole bunch of seeds in a pot and then dividing those up and transplanting them as well. So there's the penny cress. I'm going to put the emerald beads right next to it. And same thing, I'm going to leave space on either side, or on the other side, I mean, just in case we get really good germination and I need to transplant some of them. So the directions for both of these state to sow the seed outside as soon as the ground can be worked. And of course, if you can get things started outside, it's way less work on your part once they have germinated. They're going to be stronger, they'll be hardier. And if you have good soil, you don't need to do a whole lot in terms of feeding either. I put a good amount of compost here last year and again in the fall. So I shouldn't need to do anything once these germinate. They should just take care of themselves, which is ideal. All right, Bupleurum next. So this is the Green Gold Organic from Johnny's. It's going to go there. And then the Graffiti, the Graffiti from Florette is going to go here. I can't tell you how many times I've gone back and rewatched video because I forgot what I planted where. This is ending up being a really good resource for me too, when I forget what I've planted. All right, I only have about 20 seeds of the Graffiti. That's this one. So let's hope we get good germination on that one. Did get pretty good spacing on that one though, and I'm not going to worry about birds or anything eating these seeds because I do have that netting that I've been using to cover all of these beds because of certain bunnies who are still on the loose. So I'm going to sow this row a little more heavily just because I do have a lot of these seeds. Overseeding is always a good insurance policy. There we go. So 3 of my seed packets are now empty, which is good because I still have 200 of them in my seed box, which is a lot for a small garden, but a lot of them were left over from last year. I did not buy a whole lot of new seeds this year, so I really need to go through as many of them as possible because not all seeds are going to last forever. Some longer than others, but... So I'm going to go give those a water, but that's just about it. You can see how nice the daffodils are looking, and it's the same as the tulips. Some varieties are almost ready to bloom right now, and then some of them are just starting to poke up. So these will be blooming shortly, and I'm going to have to go back and watch. I'm not even sure I filmed that, but I'm going to go back and have a look. But anyway, I am really happy to have gotten that job done. It's always a bit of a milestone every spring when you get to do some direct seeding outside. And hopefully I'll be able to get the rest of that cress planted along with so much more. I have bells of Ireland, carnations, the cress. The lisianthus, I think I'm going to let it get a little bit bigger. I have larkspur and some vegetables in there too, but so much that needs to be planted out, and the weather is almost ready. So we may very well be back out here in just a few more days' time for a big planting day. Oh, I almost forgot. This is so exciting. Those of you following along with the Mechanopsis seeds, they are germinating. Just as of last night, I found a couple of sprouts. 5, I think, on the Bailey and 1 on the Lingholm. Both the typical blue Himalayan poppy color. Nothing yet on the Grandis Burgundy, but it's only been a day that I've started seeing sprouts. So those 2 are now under lights. I'm keeping a very close eye on them, and they'll be moved out to the greenhouse within a couple of days too, I think. So that's going to do it for today. Thanks so much for watching, everybody, and I'll see you back out in the garden in a few days' time.